Okay, English 11. Tonight we're talking all things Gatsby. You've been assigned chapters 1 through 4. There was questions that you need to answer, so by no means is this summary a substitution for you reading all 4 chapters, because I will not answer all the questions in this video because I want you to read the book for yourself. I know that sounds crazy, but I do want to provide a little bit of a summary and hopefully clear up, kind of any misconceptions and highlight some of the major things that I want you to pull from these chapters. So chapter 1, we meet Nick, right? Nick is our narrator. He is not the hero of the story, so that goes right along with our elements of modernism that you guys had a quiz on yesterday or today. Retakes, if you didn't do a good job. So Nick has just come out from the Midwest. He went to Yale. He wanted to be a writer, but he took the job that's oh so close to being a writer, and that is an investment banker. We find out that Nick is living in West Egg on the west side, which is new money, as opposed to East Egg, which is old money. So he lives next door to a mysterious character. We get that early on. His name is Gatsby, hence the title of the novel. And basically the chapter ends with him going to a dinner party at his cousin Daisy's house. Daisy is married to Tom. Tom went to college with Nick, kind of peaked. He was captain of everything, won every award, super duper rich, got a whole team of polo ponies and the whole 9 yards. But during their dinner, basically the phone keeps ringing and ringing and ringing. And there's a nice sort of like twist of irony, the ringing mistress, right? Which is a little bit of verbal irony in there because the ringing mistress is his actual mistress, who we'll meet in chapter 2. So at this dinner party also meets Jordan Baker. Jordan Baker is a little bit overwhelming for our little boy Nick from the Midwest. However, he's somewhat attracted and interested in her at the same time. So we kind of end chapter 1 with him returning home, and there's Gatsby on his dock, though he doesn't know it's Gatsby yet. And Gatsby's staring at that green light on Daisy's dock, just across, right? Just across the river there. And that green light becomes symbolic. We'll talk about that more. Remember, green people, there's an old saying, green with envy. Maybe he envies Tom, because Tom's married to Daisy. I don't know. And it also kind of mentions how Gatsby's arms are almost outstretched towards Daisy's dock. So, a little bit of foreshadowing, perhaps? I don't know. Motive? Don't know. So, chapter 2 begins with Tom and Nick going into the city. They stop sort of in between in the Ashlands, which is kind of like this like really run-down industrial feel. And then there's this poster, right, of this optometrist, this doctor overseeing him. And it really does sort of symbolize that the eyes of God are watching. And those eyes are sort of ever-present and brought up several times throughout the novel. So you meet, when they stop in the Ashland, you meet Tom's mistress. So the ringing mistress is real, okay? So you meet Myrtle. She is told by Tom to take a train into New York, where you find out they have a secret apartment. I mean, this guy's got so much money, he's keeping an apartment just for his mistress, which is crazy to me. Anyway, so Nick, Tom, they meet up with Myrtle there. Myrtle brings a sister. A couple other cast of characters show up, and they get stinking drunk. And basically, a bunch of debauchery ensues. The biggest part of this is towards the end. They reveal that obviously Myrtle is a little resentful of Daisy, right? Because Myrtle would probably like to escape her Ashland marriage. It's not as happening as Tom's house. Let's just put it that way. She's basically living above a garage. And she brings up Daisy. Tom gets mad. She says Daisy, 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 because he asks her to stop saying her name. And what does Tom do? He breaks her nose. Okay, so that is not a normal reaction. And not condoned by any stretch of the means. So chapter 3, basically Nick winds up at the first party. There's a personal invite from Gatsby, chauffeured over next door. And he kind of goes through discussing like just how elaborate this party is, no expense spared, famous folks there, and he spends most of the party searching for this mysterious host. He runs into Jordan. Jordan kind of gives him some of like the backstory, just one of the many stories and rumors about Gatsby. And then he also, in his travels or sort of wanderings around the party to find Gatsby, meets a strange character in the library. And the character comments on how the books are actually real books. He thought they were like dummy books. Like, I don't know if you guys have ever been to a model home, but they have these fake hollow books. There's like nothing there, right? Could that be foreshadowing? There's nothing there. It's just a facade, right? But he's surprised that the books are real. However, the books have never been opened because the edges are uncut, and back then the edges would be sealed together and they wouldn't become unglued, if you will, until the books were actually opened and read. So he kind of, the man in the library talks about how what great lengths this Gatsby must have gone to sort of create this image or maintain this image. Instead of having fake books, he went all the way to fill this library with real books. That's crazy. Who would read a real book? Anyways, he winds up talking to a guy, mentions, the guy says, hey, were you in the 3rd Division? And sort of starts reminiscing on some war stuff. And Nick kind of goes to get away, and he goes, I don't mean to be rude, but I'm trying to find the host of this party. His name is Gatsby. And then, of course, at that point, Gatsby reveals that it's him that he's been talking to the whole time. This sort of ends with Jordan coming up and Gatsby requesting to speak with Jordan privately. So off they go. And then that chapter sort of ends with Gatsby bringing Jordan back to Nick, and Jordan's basically like, wow, I have the most fantastic thing to tell you. And then chapter 3 is really weird. It kind of just goes over a bunch of the stuff that Nick did during the summer, brushing up on his investment banking, having supper at the Yale Club, and just some of the other stuff that he was doing throughout the summer. And chapter 4, boom, we're back into partying again. Because, hey, what did they do in the 20s when alcohol is illegal? We throw parties. And this time around, Gatsby tells Nick that he's going to take him into the city. So he takes him to this like underground club, really cool. And they meet this really awesome character. I mean, not awesome in terms of he's a good guy, but he seems super creepy and sketchy. His name's Wushine, right? He's got like the teeth, cufflinks and everything. And there's all these rumors that he like fixed the World Series in 1919. He's like a crime syndicate kind of guy. He's a crime boss, right? He's running things and all that. So you get a little twist thrown in here, and you start to think, maybe Gatsby isn't all that he's cracked up to be. However, Gatsby has just given Nick this crazy story. Like he says he grew up rich in the Midwest, yet his family lived in San Francisco. So if you're a fan of, geography, you know that San Francisco is actually on the West Coast. It's not in the Midwest, so things aren't really checking out. He goes through saying that he went to Oxford, and he went to the war, and he has a Medal of Valor, all this stuff, right? And Nick's like, man, what a fantastic story, basically calling him out, saying, dude, you're full of it. But then Gatsby goes and produces a picture of him at Oxford. What? And he produces the actual medal, the Medal of Valor. Now, anybody knows at this point, in 2018, you could probably get one on eBay, Craigslist, I don't know. Even a surplus store would probably have a replica, and how would Nick know? Or maybe he just inherited it. I don't know. But anyways, when they wind up in New York, they meet this Wushine character. Things are kind of getting sketchy. And then, essentially, this chapter ends with Nick finding out that Gatsby has asked Jordan to ask Nick to invite Daisy over for some tea. Now, why? Why do you ask? Well, because Jordan confides the secret in Nick that Gatsby has confided in her. And that's like back in the day, before Gatsby had any loot, him and Daisy were a thing. He was stationed in Kentucky, right? And he got sent off to the war. And he wouldn't marry Daisy. Because Daisy was like, oh, you're going to the war, let's get married, right? He's like, no, I'm not going to marry you until I'm wealthy. I'll come back from the war and I'll be wealthy. But guess what happened? Gatsby never showed up. Stood the girl up. I'm going to guess probably because he wasn't wealthy yet. So, in the meantime, Daisy meets Tom. Tom woos her, gives her like $1,000 string of pearls, which I know you guys are like, ooh, $1,000, right? But dude, remember, this is 1922. $1,000 back then, be like a $100,000 necklace now. So, she eventually gives in, right, or sort of allows herself to be wooed, agrees to marry Tom. Except then the craziest thing happens. On the day of her wedding, a letter from Gatsby shows up, and she is totally distraught. She even almost calls off the wedding. Then she burns the letter, and she decides to marry Tom anyways. Right? What? backstory. So, that's where we're at. End of chapter 4. Nick is doing what Gatsby asked Jordan to ask him to do, and that's have his cousin Daisy to go to Gatsby's for some tea. Of course, it's going to be a double date because you're going to need Jordan and Nick to sort of be a buffer so it's not all weird, right? Because, I mean, having another man's wife over for tea, kind of weird. All right. All along, those eyes of God are watching on that sign, and the green light is just shining brighter and brighter. So we'll talk more about it in class. That's your overview of the first 4 chapters. Make sure you get them questions done, and have a great night.